Yo, history isn't just words in a book. Sometimes it's locked inside photos. Moments so real you can almost step into them. Shots that carry emotion, style, struggle, or straight-up mystery. Let's walk through some images that capture whole worlds in a single frame. Take post-war West Germany in the 1950s. A nurse touring the country pulled out her Kodachrome camera, and what she captured is wild. Bright colors show families rebuilding, kids running in the streets, shop windows glowing with life again. You can feel the scars of war, but you can also see hope stitched into everyday life. Then the vibe jumps to the 1970s. Couples walked into photo studios dressed like they owned the decade. Flared pants, bold prints, collars so wide they could fly, and hair stacked high. These portraits weren't just about being in love. They were about flexing freedom, confidence, and style that screamed, "This is who we are." School spirit had its own shine too. Vintage shots of cheerleaders show a different era. Longer skirts, simple uniforms, and pure energy in the routines. It wasn't about flashy tricks, it was about pride and raw enthusiasm. The kind of nostalgia that makes you hear the crowd in your head. Not all stories feel lighthearted though. In 1961, Michael Rockefeller disappeared in New Guinea while collecting tribal art. Searches came up empty, no body, no closure. People still argue, did he drown or did something darker happen? His vanishing turned into a mystery that still hangs in the air like smoke. Music history had its own turning points too. Photos of a young Linda Ronstadt show her before she became a legend. Just a fresh face with insane talent, natural beauty, and stage presence that couldn't be ignored. You're looking at someone who didn't just sing songs, she shifted the sound of a whole era. Fast forward to 2020, and grocery shopping looks like another planet. Homemade masks tied tight, arrows taped on floors, half-empty shelves. Simple errands felt like survival drills. These images capture how the pandemic didn't just change life, it reshaped the tiniest routines. Back in 1962, people thought they had a grip on the future. A book came out predicting what 1975 might look like. Turns out, some of it was pretty close. Space exploration, automated living, smarter communication. It's crazy to see how the early 60s imagined tomorrow, and how much of it actually came true. Hollywood, of course, has its timeless icons. In the 80s and 90s, Michelle Pfeiffer was unstoppable. Photos of her during that stretch show elegance, style, and a magnetism you just can't fake. She wasn't just an actress. She was a standard of what it meant to be unforgettable on screen. You know, flip through old ads though, and you hit a sour note. Women were treated as punchlines, props, or background servants. The sexism is blunt, even cringy, but it's real proof of what they face daily. Those ads weren't just marketing. They were reflections of a culture women had to fight through. Meanwhile, the 1980s had people geeking out over tech that looks clunky now, but felt revolutionary back then. Brick-sized cell phones, clattering computers, cassette players clicking shut. Photos of everyday folks using those gadgets capture a moment where tech was shifting from luxury into daily life. But long before smartphones, people dreamed big. Retrofuturism photos show flying cars, shiny space towers, robots serving dinner. It was optimism splashed in neon, a future that never came but still sparks wonder. A look at how imagination can shape the way people live in the present. The beauty industry had its own flavor of weird. Gadgets from the 1920s to 40s look straight up bizarre now. Metal masks, hair curlers that could pass as torture devices, machines buzzing with promises of perfect skin. It's half fascinating, half creepy, and it makes you wonder what people will think of our routines a century from now. On the opposite end, there are photos of women's faces. Nurses, mothers, workers, soldiers. No filters, no posing, just raw strength. Every look in their eyes tells a story of resilience, sacrifice, and the kind of courage history doesn't always write down, but always needs. Then you hit Italy in the 1980s, and it's nothing but charm. Sunlit piazzas, buzzing cafes, fashion spilling out on every street corner. These photos capture a country living slow, sweet, and stylish, Tradition blended with modern edge, wrapped in pure Mediterranean warmth. Farrah Fawcett owned her time too. Her smile, her hair, her presence. She wasn't just a celebrity, she was a phenomenon. Every picture of her feels bigger than life, like a snapshot of a cultural wave that swept through the 70s and 80s. Cities show a different kind of wave: growth. Photos comparing skylines then versus now are insane. What were once quiet avenues now look like glowing jungles of steel and glass. Old landmarks still hang on, but everything else is in motion, proving cities are living, breathing time machines. The 1990s in Cuba tell another kind of story. Life was tough. Ration lines, shortages, old cars rolling down cracked streets. But the photos also show joy, music, and spirit. Even in struggle, culture thrived, and people found ways to keep moving forward. One shot from 1948 cuts the deepest. A man on his knees outside a Chicago divorce court, begging his wife to forgive him. He's desperate, she's composed, and the world is watching. The photo freezes raw heartbreak, pride, and love crashing in real time. Some women, though, flipped the script entirely. Famous figures stepped out with unshaven armpits, shrugging at beauty standards. It was rebellion, confidence, and freedom rolled into one. The photos feel bold even now, showing that sometimes the most powerful statement is just being yourself. And then there are the monuments in Yugoslavia. Massive, surreal concrete structures built to honor wartime sacrifices. They look like they came from another planet, scattered across mountains and fields. With the nation gone, they stand like abandoned ghosts, strange, beautiful, and haunting reminders of a history that vanished. And who remembers the video store era? The 80s and 90s meant blockbuster nights, neon signs, and walls stacked with VHS boxes. Families made it an event, wandering aisles, debating movie picks, maybe sneaking in some candy. It was simple, it was special, and the photos bring back all that ritualistic weekend magic. Let's talk real inspiration. Terry Fox. This Canadian athlete lost a leg to cancer but refused to quit. In 1980, he launched the Marathon of Hope, running across the country to raise awareness and funds. His determination was insane, and he turned personal pain into a worldwide movement for cancer research. Over in France, things got surreal with the Bogdanov twins. TV personalities turned internet icons. They went through years of extreme plastic surgery, morphing their faces in ways that shocked and fascinated people. From charm to controversy, their transformation became a cultural talking point, a living experiment in fame and reinvention. Now rewind to the toys of the 70s. Hot Wheels tracks, Stretch Armstrong, Barbies, and Star Wars figures. These were the must-have treasures kids begged their parents for. No smartphones, no screens, just pure imagination and joy. The photos throw us back to a simpler time when playtime was everything. Then came the 90s wide-leg jeans. Baggy wasn't just fashion, it was a movement. Skaters, rappers, rebels, all wore them oversized as a symbol of street style and defiance, comfort plus swagger. Photos from back then scream attitude, showing how denim got pushed way beyond traditional fits. On the silver screen, you had Sid Charisse, the Hollywood dancer with elegance and legs literally insured for millions. Vintage photos of her younger years reveal pure beauty and grace, proof of why she lit up musicals and became a timeless golden era icon. And way before memes, there was Joseph Ducrot. This 18th century French painter ditched boring poses and painted himself yawning, smirking, pointing, straight up comedic self-portraits. It broke all the rules of art back then, and today those same paintings fuel internet meme culture. Dude was ahead of his time. Oh, back to Yugoslavia, summer in the 80s. Photos show families packing Adriatic beaches, kids hanging in the streets, and retro fashion everywhere. It's nostalgic, warm, and captures the community vibe before the country broke apart. Bittersweet history wrapped in sunshine. Now brace yourself for 1970s playgrounds. These things were straight up dangerous. Towering metal slides, hard concrete landings, and climbing structures that looked like death traps. But kids loved them. The photos show a mix of thrill and risk, back when playtime meant scrapes, bruises, and real adventure. Speaking of danger, meet the Darvaza gas crater in Turkmenistan. In 1971, scientists lit it on fire to burn off leaking natural gas. They thought it'd die out in weeks. Decades later, it's still blazing. Nicknamed the Door to Hell, the pit glows non-stop, looking like Earth's own eternal fire pit. And finally, let's talk 70s men's hairstyles. Vintage portraits show every look possible. Feathered cuts, sideburns, afros, shaggy rock star locks. Disco vibes mixed with rock influence. It wasn't just hair, it was identity. Those photos capture a fearless decade where style said everything about who you were. Let's kick things off with young Hedy Lamarr. You've seen her as the Hollywood goddess and even heard about her genius inventions. But these rare photos, whole different vibe. Forget the glossy studio glam. This is raw Hedy, natural beauty and individuality shining through way before worldwide fame put her in a box. From Hollywood to the Siberian wilderness, meet the Lykov family. Back in the 1930s, they dipped into the deep forest to dodge religious persecution, then stayed off the grid for 42 years. No cities, no stores, just handmade tools, homegrown food, and sheer determination. When scientists stumbled on them in 1978, the world was blown away by their extreme isolation. Now for something totally unexpected, Apple's 1986 clothing line. Yep, the tech giant tried fashion. Instead of computers, they dropped t-shirts, caps, and neon-colored 80s gear stamped with the rainbow Apple logo. It was bold, weird, and a total flop at the time. But today, collectors are paying big money for that rare drip. Meanwhile, in the Balkans, moms were practicing an old tradition called sikanje tattoos. They'd ink their kids, mostly girls, with tiny crosses and geometric marks using soot-based ink and simple tools. It wasn't about looks, it was protection, faith, and cultural identity. Especially during Ottoman times, it was survival ink with meaning. Speaking of the Balkans, let's roll into Yugoslavia's music scene. The 70s and 80s gave us some of the most hilarious, bizarre album covers ever. Wild outfits, awkward props, poses that made no sense. Looking back, they're funny as hell, but they also capture that fearless experimental energy that made the region's pop culture unforgettable. Now switch over to rock stars in tight pants. We're talking 70s and 80s legends strutting on stage in skin-hugging denim and leather. It was fashion, rebellion, and sex appeal rolled into one. Those photos show how something as simple as pants turned into a symbol of rock's wild, no-rules lifestyle. But then we go from loud to eerie, final photos of famous people taken just before their deaths. At first, they look like casual snapshots, but once you know what happens next, they hit way harder. Ordinary moments become haunting time capsules, reminding us how fragile life really is. Now lighten up with some nostalgia. Prom night in the 90s. Picture shiny tuxes, neon dresses, giant hairstyles, and awkward teenage smiles frozen in time. Some of it's cringy, some of it's funny, but all of it's unforgettable. Those photos are pure throwback gold, capturing the awkward charm of growing up in that decade. Next stop, the golden age of surfing. Back in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't just a sport, it was a lifestyle. Wooden boards, sandy beaches, and endless summers. The photos from that era show carefree coastal youth culture, a whole vibe of freedom and ocean energy we still chase today. In 1948, at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, these vintage photos capture young women studying in libraries, laughing with friends on the lawn, and carrying on campus traditions. It was a post-war generation, balancing academics, independence, and culture. At a time when opportunities for women were still limited, Smith stood as a place of empowerment, preparing them to step confidently into the world. Decades later, another woman would capture global attention, Florence Griffith Joyner, or FloJo. Known as the fastest woman on Earth, she wasn't just about speed, she was about spectacle. With her bold one-legged racing suits, colorful nails, and unmatched style, she stunned crowds around the globe. These photos prove she redefined not only athletics, but also how the world viewed women in sports. Powerful, stylish, and unapologetically themselves. But fashion tells us stories long before Flojo's time. In the early 1900s, swimwear looked very different from today. Vintage photos show wool suits, stockings, and caps, outfits that weighed heavy in the water. These clothes weren't just about swimming, they were about fitting into society's rigid rules of modesty. Looking back, it's striking how far freedom of style has come in just a century. The lens of history can be harsh too. In 1990, after communism collapsed in Romania, photos reveal the painful truth: empty shops, endless food lines, and crumbling buildings. People who had lived under Ceausescu's regime suddenly faced poverty and uncertainty. Yet in their eyes you can see determination, resilience, and a fragile but real hope for democracy. Not all memories are this heavy. In the 2000s, before high-speed internet took over, LAN parties were the soul of gaming. Imagine friends dragging huge PCs into basements, tangling wires across the floor, and staying up all night fueled by pizza and energy drinks. These photos show a community built on connection, competition, and laughter. Gaming wasn't just online avatars, it was face-to-face friendships. But some images remind us of medicine's darkest missteps. Mid-20th century lobotomies, once promoted as cutting-edge cures for mental illness, left patients subdued, vacant, or broken. Before and after photos reveal personalities erased, lives altered forever. They stand as chilling reminders that science without compassion can do more harm than good. Culture, though, always produces icons, and few were bigger than Pamela Anderson in the late 80s and 90s. These vintage shots trace her rise from modeling to global fame. With her blonde hair, bold style, and Baywatch stardom, she became a symbol of glamour in pop culture. She wasn't just a TV star, she was a cultural phenomenon who defined an entire era. But not every story glitters. Dina Sanichar, found in India in the 19th century, was a feral child raised by wolves. He never fully adapted to human society and never learned to speak. His life was tragic and mysterious, yet unforgettable. Many believe he inspired Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, a reminder of how reality can shape myth. Fashion circles back again in the 1940s. Teenage girls at the time had a style of their own: pleated skirts, sweaters, and saddle shoes spotted in schoolyards and soda shops. The look was modest, shaped by wartime simplicity, yet carried a youthful energy. These photos capture a generation balancing responsibility with the first sparks of post-war freedom. Now picture Hong Kong in the 1980s. Stunning black and white photos show neon-lit streets, crowded markets, and quiet back alleys. It was a city alive with contrasts, old traditions pressed against rapid modernization. Through these images, you feel both the raw energy of growth and the soul of a community caught between two worlds. And then, the motorcycles. From the 1920s to the 1950s, proud riders posed with their bikes like badges of honor. For some, motorcycles meant freedom. For others, style or status. These vintage photos remind us that the motorcycle wasn't just transportation. It was identity, grit, and glamour, all rolled into one. Meanwhile, in the Maya world around 600 AD, ceramic El Peru figurines told stories of their own. With incredible detail and removable helmets, they weren't just art, they were symbols of belief, ritual, and social order. These artifacts connect us to the Maya's spiritual world, revealing how attire and identity carried meaning far deeper than decoration. History also has its playful side. Imagine people dressed as living Christmas trees, covered head to toe in ornaments, tinsel, and stars. These quirky vintage photos capture an era when holiday spirit went beyond decorations. It turned people themselves into symbols of celebration. Funny, festive, and full of charm. By the 1950s and 60s, hair salons became cultural hubs. Women sat under dryers, flipped through magazines, and shared gossip while stylists perfected curls and bouffants. These photos show that salons weren't just about beauty, they were about belonging. A place where style and community came hand in hand. Then we enter Harlem in the 1970s, through Jack Garofalo's camera. His photos reveal a neighborhood alive with music, fashion, and resilience. Despite struggle and hardship, Harlem carried pride and creativity. Through his lens, you see not just streets, but the soul of a community during a transformative decade. Some stories feel almost mythical, like Chris McCandless, the young man who left society for Alaska's wilderness. His rare photos show solitude, determination, and a haunting beauty. Immortalized in Into the Wild, his journey was one of idealism and tragedy, reminding us of the thin line between freedom and survival. Earlier still, the early 1900s to 1920s saw explorers braving Antarctica's brutal ice. Rare photos show wooden ships trapped in frozen seas, sled dogs pulling supplies, and men enduring unimaginable cold. These images preserve a chapter of human courage at the edge of the world, where survival itself was victory. But not all treasures survived. The Bamiyan Buddha statues of Afghanistan, carved in the 6th century, once stood as towering marvels of art and faith. Destroyed by the Taliban in 2001, the photos now carry their memory. They remind us of both their beauty and the immense cultural loss their destruction caused. History's shadows also reveal the women who stood beside infamous men, dictators, criminals, tyrants. These photos show not just companions, but women woven into the fabric of dark legacies. Some were loyal, some influential, some simply surviving. But all became part of history's darkest chapters. And finally, we end in the 1980s, with weddings bursting with bold fashion, puffy sleeves, lace, pastel decor, and big hair. These photos capture not just trends, but joy, family, and the playful spirit of the decade. Love celebrated in bold, unforgettable style. Together, these images remind us that photos are more than just pictures. They are time machines. They take us into moments of pride, pain, beauty, and resilience, letting us see history not as words, but as life itself.